Hello everybody and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners. My name is Rebecca and today is another episode where we are cooking for the senior and her grandson who I am assisting. This is my 4th week of cooking for them, and at this point I do have a really good idea of what they like and don't like. I do have a bit of a theme for this week, which I'm really excited about, based on a suggestion that I try to make some kind of old-fashioned things because she is in her 80s, and so it might be a little nostalgic for her to have some meals that maybe she grew up eating or that she would have prepared for her family when she was around my age, which I thought was a really fantastic idea. So a lot of the things I'm going to be making this week are kind of old-fashioned or classic meals that I think they will really enjoy. I have tried to inquire about what kind of meals she used to enjoy growing up or what kinds of things she used to cook for her family. It's kind of hard for her to answer that because of some memory loss. So just like I mentioned in my last video, I am curating a menu for them each week, picking kind of one thing from each of several different categories. For their fruit this week, we're going to do a fruit salad, kind of a classic fruit salad. I have strawberries, kiwis, mandarin oranges, and grapes. This week we're doing a corn chowder. For the sandwich, we're doing an old-fashioned chicken salad on a potato roll. Dessert is going to be an old-fashioned banana pudding. For their breakfast this week, I'm going to make them some more of those chocolate banana nut muffins that she really enjoyed from the first week, and also I'm going to make them some sausage, egg, and cheese English muffin breakfast sandwiches. For their dinners this week, I am going to be making a classic beef stroganoff. And then she did mention that she really likes fish, so I'm going to be making some baked cod. I'll probably do some kind of an herb and butter rice with that, along with some zucchini and some squash. And then, as I mentioned at the end of my last video, this week I'm going to be making her some extra mashed potatoes because mashed potatoes so far have been one of her favorite things that I have made for her. Again, we have a really nice and varied menu, and I am very excited to get started. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to start with the corn chowder this week, but I'm not going to be busting out the crock pot because I do need to brown some bacon for that. And if I'm doing the steps of browning something on the stovetop, I'm just going to make it on the stovetop. So I have a package of hickory smoked bacon, 12-ounce package. I've got about 5 small medium-ish potatoes, 1 whole onion. I have some reduced sodium chicken broth. I have 2 cans of cream style corn and 1 can of whole kernel corn. It's not quite corn season here yet. Once it is sweet corn season, I will make this again with fresh corn on the cob, but for today the canned will be fine. And then I'm also using some cream, and seasonings are going to be super simple, just salt and pepper. The other day I was thinking about how I do have these like silicone baking sheets, and I think that they would make a really great swap for paper towels under my cutting boards to, keep them from sliding. Maybe it kind of works. Let's try the bigger one and see if that makes a difference. Because then it sits, it still kind of slides. So that was a good thought, but I think I'm still gonna have to do the wet rag or paper towel. First thing I'm gonna do is peel and dice all these potatoes, and I usually show myself doing this at the cutting board, but I actually do it over the trash can. So I usually peel 1 potato on camera right here, and then I'll peel the other ones over by the trash can. I think it's interesting that we probably each have our own unique way of doing kind of simple tasks like dicing a potato. And next I'm going to peel and dice 1 onion. Some days my hands don't feel like they want to work properly, and this feels like one of those days. So if I'm awkward, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that that's why. I did not have any, I had feedback on last week's meals, but it was just that they enjoyed all of them, especially the chicken pot pie soup and the French toast. The home aide said that she absolutely loved the chicken pot pie soup and ate pretty much all of it. So I know that corn chowder is one of her favorites, and so I'm hoping that she enjoys this soup as well. It seems like she's a soup person, which makes me happy because soups are definitely something that I don't cook very often. So I'm also going to cut down this bacon into about 1/2 inch chunks. So let's start with our bacon. And I'm just going to fry the bacon until it's crispy. But we are looking pretty good. It's not super crispy, but it's also going back in the soup. But we're just about there. I'll give it a couple more minutes. So now let's remove our bacon. Just kind of let it drip off as you remove it. I've talked about it before, I'm not much of a soup person, but I love chowders. Specifically, I love clam chowder. That's probably the only soup that I will eat as a meal on its own. So now we're gonna go in with our onion. And I'm gonna use the onion to help me deglaze the bottom of this pan, get up all that bacon goodness. And from here, we're just gonna kind of dump and go. So diced potatoes, chicken broth. I'm gonna do 3 cups of chicken broth, or just enough to pretty much cover the potatoes. I'm also gonna go in with both of our cans of cream style corn. And our can of whole kernel corn. Give that a stir, and I'm gonna let this come up to a boil. Now that we're boiling, I'm gonna cover that with a lid and let it simmer for 20 minutes. So while that's simmering, I'm gonna get started on their muffins for the week. So again, we're doing the chocolate banana nut, and it was really funny because, you know, I met them last week and we sat down and we were talking through everything, and the homemade was like, she loved those chocolate banana muffins that you made. How did you make those? And I was kind of chuckled a little bit. I was a little embarrassed to be like, I just mixed together a chocolate and a banana nut muffin mix together. And it was kind of, you know, a moment of like, oh, well, you know, that's probably not the answer she was expecting, but it also makes it attainable. It means that it's realistic, that anybody could make these for her if they wanted to. So that's what we're doing. I have the chocolate chip and the banana nut muffin mix, and I just mix them both together. Each pack needs a half cup of milk, so I'm gonna use 1 cup total. That was the same thing about how I felt about the potatoes too, when they said that she loved the potatoes, and I was like, oh, they were just instant. I just added butter and sour cream to them. It feels like you should have like this, oh yeah, I made them all from scratch answer. We all have different strengths and we're all at different parts in our journey. So I like being able to say that these meals are enjoyed, even if sometimes they're made from a packet. Because ultimately, I want to inspire other people to do the same for other people in their community, and I don't want them to feel like this goal is out of reach if it requires too many ingredients, if it requires too much time or too much effort that they can't really put forward. It's about the thought more so than it is about making everything from scratch. Pop those in the oven and let them bake for 18 minutes or so. It's been 18 minutes or so, so not quite 20, but I'm gonna check and see if the potatoes are tender. They should be at this point. That's perfect, and the potatoes have a really rich sweet corn flavor to them. I'm gonna add back in that bacon from earlier. Then I'm also gonna add in 1 cup of half and half. I may add 2. I'm gonna start with 1 and see how creamy it is. Let's do an extra half cup. So 1.5 cups of half and half. And the last thing to do is season this to taste. I'm gonna add some pepper to it. I know a few of you have mentioned, you know, pepper sensitivity in seniors, but she has not mentioned that to me so far. She hasn't said that anything that I have made has been too peppery, so I'm just gonna go with that. And I am gonna taste it before I add any salt, since we added things like canned corn, we added chicken broth to it. I don't want it to be too salty. Plus there's salt in bacon. It's delicious, lightly sweet. I am gonna add a little bit of salt, not much. I'm almost out of salt anyways. I am gonna let this cool for a little while before I pack it up. And I think the next thing I'm gonna work on is chicken for the chicken salad. I did get a much better chicken this go around. This is my preferred brand of chicken. I get it from Food Lion. This is called Nature's Promise. It says it's minimally processed, no artificial ingredients, all vegetarian diet, no growth hormones, no antibiotics. It's more expensive than the regular chicken, but it's much better quality. As you guys know, with the last time, I struggled with that cheap chicken from Walmart. So we're gonna upgrade the chicken. Lately, I've been going to Food Lion about once or twice a week, and I'll usually go on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday afternoon, and I'll check around for any markdowns, and I've been trying to stock up my freezer, specifically with this brand of chicken whenever I can find it on sale. So you can also use a rotisserie chicken or leftover cooked chicken. I'm gonna be using a poaching method for this chicken salad, so we're gonna add all 3 of these chicken breasts into a large pot. And then we're gonna add water to cover the chicken by about 2 inches. All right, that's the timer for the muffins. So let's take those out and let them cool before I pack them up as well. Now from here, we're gonna season the cooking water. So I'm gonna add salt. As I mentioned, I'm almost out of the table salt, so I'm gonna be using just some sea salt. I'm also gonna crack in some black pepper. A little bit of thyme leaves, about a teaspoon or so, and also rosemary, about a teaspoon. And I'm gonna let that come up to a boil. Once the water comes up to a boil, you're gonna turn off the heat, flip the chicken, cover with a lid, and let this sit for 10 minutes. While our chicken is poaching, we're gonna fill up our soup containers with her corn chowder. So I've got 2 really full containers of corn chowder, and there's a little bit of soup left, which I'll probably just save for myself. Maybe I'll eat some soup for lunch today. So after 10 minutes, we're gonna remove our chicken breast from the water. And we're just gonna let those sit and rest for an additional 5 minutes to help reseal in those juices. Now you can definitely save this broth. Again, we seasoned it with salt, pepper, rosemary, and thyme. I'm just gonna run it through a strainer to remove any scum or dry herbs. I've been toying around with whether I was gonna cube the chicken or shred it, but I think I am gonna shred it. And the easiest way to shred it's with a mixer. So we're gonna plop all of our cooked chicken breasts into, I'm gonna use my KitchenAid, but I've also done it with a hand mixer before. You gotta be careful with this method because it can go from like perfectly shredded to just mush in a matter of seconds because it's automated. So I do keep a pretty close eye on it, and as soon as I can tell that all the chicken, all the big chunks are kind of shredded up, that's when I call it good. And that is the result. So while our chicken cools, I'm going to dice up some celery. And while I dice up the celery, I'm going to tell you why I don't cook with celery very often. And it is because Michael, my boyfriend, cannot stand celery. He can taste it in just about anything, so I have to leave it out. But I personally love celery. In fact, when I was a kid at Thanksgiving time, my mom used to make this dish called stuffed celery. And I've never seen anybody else make this or eat it before. And what it was a celery stalk. You left it whole but cut it into like 2-inch chunks. And then she would make a salad to stuff on the inside of the celery. And that salad was a mixture of diced tomatoes, cheddar cheese, mayonnaise, salt, and pepper. So have you ever heard of a dish like that? And if you have, I would love to know, is there an actual name for it? Because I have no idea where that dish came from. I just know that my mom made it for us every Thanksgiving, and it was one of my favorites. There's my bowl of shredded chicken. I'm gonna add in 2 stalks of finely diced celery. And I'm also gonna add in a very small amount of finely minced onion, maybe just a couple of tablespoons, not enough to overpower, just to add some flavor. This leads me into my next question, which is, what do you put in your chicken salad? I ask this because every quote unquote salad that I've had has basically been, and I mean tuna salad, egg salad, potato salad, chicken salad, has basically just been the main component. So in this case, the chicken with some veggies added to it, celery and onion, mayonnaise, salt, and pepper. That's pretty much it. Maybe mustard sometimes, but never things like apples, grapes, walnuts. And it seems to be exclusive to chicken salad that people put that kind of stuff in there. So I'm just curious, what do you put in your chicken salad? I might try it at some point. But for now, I'm just gonna keep it simple with some mayonnaise, about a half cup or so. I'm also gonna add some salt and pepper to it. A little bit of paprika. And a little squeeze of some fresh lemon juice. This is 1/4 of a lemon. I almost want to add a little bit more mayonnaise, but I also don't want it to be too wet. I like my salads a little bit heavier on the mayonnaise, so I think I'm just going to leave it as is. Good quality mayonnaise also makes a difference. I live in the South, and mayonnaise of the South is Duke's. So I do think, because I don't want to run the risk of the chicken salad sandwiches potentially getting soggy, that I am going to send them the chicken salad and the bread separately this week. And then for the bread to go along with the chicken salad, I got them some of these old-time sandwich style potato rolls. I think those will pair really well together. If you're interested, I can leave a link to these little bakery boxes. I don't think I linked them last time, but they're pretty easy to put together. Let's pop our muffins in there, which are well cooled. Solid day so far, and I am happy with the progression of the meals that I'm making. I like the kind of old-fashioned kind of theme that I'm going with here. I think she's really going to enjoy the meals. If you guys have any suggestions, I would love to hear them down below. Like, what was one of your childhood favorites, or something that you remember eating, growing up eating? What was one of your kind of classic meals? That way I can start to integrate those into the menu, because I love the idea of trying to make her things that, you know, maybe she's forgotten about. Maybe she used to eat it growing up. Maybe she used to cook it for her family, but maybe she hasn't had it in a really long time. I'm obviously guessing. I'm guessing to a degree, you know, what she used to eat. I have tried to ask, you know, about if they have any like Italian ancestry or Polish ancestry or anything like that. But they didn't really understand what I was asking, so I am probably just gonna stick with kind of classic comfort foods, unless I kind of can make some deductions based on what they like and they don't like. So just made myself an iced coffee. Lately I've been enjoying the Cinnabon International Delight Coffee Creamer. It's kind of my obsession. But the next thing I think I'm gonna make is the beef stroganoff. For when I'm cooking beef stroganoff for myself, I always just use ground beef, but I was looking up some classic beef stroganoffs, and I usually use steak or some kind of a roast. So I do have a chuck shoulder roast. Again, this is that Nature's Promise brand, and this was expensive. This was $15, but again, for me, I would just use ground beef, but we are trying to make some classic recipes, and this is about a 2-pound roast. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean this up, cut off any of the large, fattier bits. And then I'm gonna be cutting this into bite-sized pieces. I'm just gonna cut it into chunks. I did buy pre-sliced mushrooms, so I have 2 8-ounce containers of sliced white mushrooms. And then I'm going to be slicing up 1 onion. I am also going to be mincing 4 cloves of garlic, which for simplicity I'm going to use a garlic press for, but I do use a garlic press in a bit of a unique way because I don't have the grip strength to use it like this, so I actually have to do that. So once all our veggies are prepped, I'm gonna go into my big cast iron Dutch oven with about a half stick of butter. And I'm also gonna add about 2 tablespoons of cooking oil to that as well. Now let that preheat on medium to medium high heat. All right, once that's preheated, nice and foamy, I'm gonna go in with that 2 pounds of chuck roast that I cubed up. And I'm gonna be seasoning that with some salt. This is again, that coarse sea salt and some pepper. And I'm gonna sear these beef cubes and turn up the heat a little bit on that. The beef is browning up. I do want it to be nice and tender. So at this point, I'm gonna go in with my minced garlic, sliced onions. Give those a toss. I've also washed both of those packs of sliced mushrooms, so that's gonna go in there as well. Now I'm gonna sprinkle over some flour. This is 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And then the next thing that goes in is a carton of beef broth, so 4 cups. And a good splash of Worcestershire. Worcestershire? Good splash of Worcestershire. Now we're boiling. I'm gonna cover that and let it simmer for 1 hour, because I want that beef to be ultra tender. In the meantime, while the stroganoff is simmering, I'm gonna get started on the next dinner that I'm gonna be making for them, which is cod, because again, she really likes fish and I'm gonna try to incorporate some fish. But as you guys know, I don't usually cook fish. It's not really my forte. So I am gonna be using a recipe. This is the garlic butter baked cod from Budget Bites. And so I have 6 cod fillets. I'm missing one. That's only 5. There it is. 6 cod fillets that I thawed in my fridge overnight. So into a bowl, we're supposed to add 1 stick of butter. I'm gonna stick that in the microwave just to soften slightly, only 10 to 15 seconds. So next I'm gonna add 4 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm also gonna add some parsley. This is my freeze-dried parsley, and some paprika. It calls for salt, but I'm using salted butter, so I'm not gonna add any extra salt to it for now. And I'm also gonna go in there with some garlic. It says 8 cloves of garlic. So that's basically the recipe from Budget Bites, but I'm a big fan of, like, usually I find multiple recipes and then I combine several elements together to make it to my own taste. I am gonna add some lemon juice into this butter spread as well. It's about half a lemon. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more paprika into it because I do want it to have some color. So let's just add a little extra stuff, a little bit of onion powder, some thyme leaves, oregano, a little bit of pepper. Now let's mix that all together. And that is going to be our spread for our fish. I want to do this all in one pan, so I also have 3 squash and 3 zucchinis. And I'm going to quarter and dice each of those. All right, so there's my sheet pan with a mixture of zucchini and squash. I am gonna go ahead and toss that in some olive oil and salt and pepper. And get it into an even layer on the bottom here. Layer my cod fillets on top. All right, next we're gonna spread some of that seasoned butter mixture over each of the fillets. I'm gonna make sure that each one is coated in that butter mixture. And as it cooks, all that will drip down onto the zucchini and the squash below, which is why I only season them with salt and pepper. My oven's preheated to 400 degrees, and I'm not quite sure how long that's gonna take. Oh shoot, I forgot the lemon slices. Hold on. I have 10 lemon slices. I'm just going to layer them on top wherever I can. I suppose I should have put one on each fillet. Okay, so one lemon slice on each fillet and some kind of strewn about. And I'm gonna let that bake again. I'm thinking 20 to 25 minutes, but I'll check on it intermittently. I want to show you what our stroganoff is looking like. This is about halfway through the 1 hour simmer. And it's a little on the thin side, so I might let it simmer without the lid on it to try to get that sauce to thicken up a little bit, make it a little less soupy. So as you can see, I upped the heat a little bit. It's on medium right now, and it's been simmering without the lid on for about 15 minutes, and it's thickened up considerably. It's not quite as thick as I would like still though, so I'm gonna let it go. This is the last like 15 minutes or so for it to be an hour. And there's really no rush with this process. I can let this simmer as long as I want. We're just trying to reduce down the sauce a bit. But in the meantime, I am gonna get some water boiling for the egg noodles. So that was a 1 pound bag of egg noodles, and I'm gonna just cook that until it's al dente, so about 6 to 7 minutes or so. And you can see my timer going in the background here. So we still have 4 minutes left on my 1 hour timer that I set. And this has thickened up a good bit, which makes me very happy. And it's very rich. I have tried it. It may be a little too rich. Hopefully she doesn't think it's too rich, but it could be. But I still have to add sour cream to it, and the other part of it is that it's going over the egg noodles, which I did not salt or season in any sort of capacity, so that will help to balance it as well. So taking that beef stroganoff off the heat. So I completely forgot to hit record, but the last thing I added was an 8-ounce tub of sour cream, and now I'm just making sure that it's all mixed in, but we have this nice creamy beef stroganoff. I'm debating whether to put the noodles in with this or whether to just spoon this over the top, but since this is so, it's still a little on the liquidy side, and again, like I mentioned, you know, it's quite rich. I think I am going to put the noodles in with the sauce. That wasn't even all of the noodles. I'll do a little bit more. So I'm going to say that you probably only need a 12-ounce bag of egg noodles. Again, this was a 1 pound, but I think 12 ounces would have been perfect for this amount of sauce. Because I don't want it to be too dry either, because the egg noodles will soak up some of that moisture as they sit. So as usual, I am dividing everything evenly between 6 containers. And I'm going to finish each one of these off by now dividing the gravy between them. And also there's our fish. This probably did like 30 to 35 minutes because you've got to remember that like the fish wasn't in direct contact with the pan. It needed to be heated through the vegetables and then the fish. But it's got a like really rich like buttery sauce in there. I think I was gonna make rice for the side, but she really likes mashed potatoes, so I think I am gonna do mashed potatoes for the side with the fish too. So the first week that I made her potatoes, I used this butter and herb flavor. The second week I made her potatoes, I used this baby reds flavor. So I got a bag of each, since I'm gonna be giving her some extra potatoes. For the fish side, I'll probably go with the baby reds. So definitely my main concern with the fish is how well it's gonna reheat, but I'm sure if it doesn't reheat well, they will let me know. So packet of potatoes, this is a family size pack, and 4 cups of boiling water. Give that a whisk. My whisk is hot because it just came out of the dishwasher. I did try the vegetables from the fish dish, and they're pretty good. They're definitely very lemony, very buttery. I think she's really gonna enjoy it, but again, I'm not sure how the fish or how well the fish is gonna reheat. Y'all know I'm all about presentation. I really want these to look nice. Well, these fish fillets are perfectly tender. I really hope they reheat well. I don't really think I need the extra lemon slices though. 1 lemon slice on each fish fillet is probably good. All right, let's start with that. These vegetables are kind of ultra tender too. I was concerned that the vegetables would taste fishy since, you know, I cooked the fish in the same pan, but they don't seem to taste fishy at all to me. They taste very buttery and rich. I think she's gonna enjoy them since she seems to really like butter. I'm sure that you guys can tell, like, I put a lot of forethought into what I'm gonna make or how I'm gonna make it, and trying to make sure that I give them the best possible food that I can. So a fish fillet and a lemon wedge on top of each little bed of vegetables there. And so I'm gonna finish off each of these fish dishes with a good spoonful of mashed potatoes. Next up, we're gonna make their breakfasts. And for this, I'm just gonna be busting out the griddle here. Let me grab an extension cord for that. My appliances are almost always plugged into a surge protector because, as you can see, this is as far as the griddle would go and it doesn't line up with the center. So last week when my power went out, I had a couple of concerns about like if there was a surge to the crock pot, but I always have them plugged into a surge protector anyways. So let's heat this up to 350. We're gonna be making them some sausage, egg, and cheese English muffins, kind of like a McDonald's McMuffin. I like to buy these frozen sausage patties because, number one, I think they're better than most sausage in general. They're most like what you would get at a restaurant. And the second part is because they're already like perfectly sized for a breakfast sandwich. There's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, technically speaking, these sausage patties are already fully cooked, but they're frozen. And I like to still go through and get some browning on them. Technically though, if you're making sandwiches to reheat, you could just assemble them with the thawed sausage patties. You don't have to fry them. Now it's time to get started on the eggs. I do have these stainless steel egg molds. However, you don't need them. You can use a mason jar lid, scrambled eggs, or you can even just bake them in the oven in a casserole dish and then cut them into squares, which I've done all of those things at one point or another. I'm gonna go through and just pop the yolk on each one. And that is why I meant to spray those with non-stick cooking spray, because now they're all gonna stick. This is not ideal, but my bad. I usually do spray these. Kind of have to. Now I've kind of messed up all of these eggs because I forgot to spray them, but it's fine. It's not the worst thing in the world. And if that's the worst thing that happens today, then I'm totally fine with that. Which I have cleaned these as best as I can. And this time, we're definitely not gonna forget the cooking spray. I only have 6 egg molds. That's why I'm doing them 6 at a time. Hopefully that's better now. They still stick a little bit, no matter what. It's better with the non-stick spray, as you can see. And then while those finish up, I'm going to get started on the English muffins. I have 2 packs of Thomas's English muffins, which I have gone ahead and pre-pulled apart. Separated is probably a better word. And I'm gonna start toasting those up. All right, those are looking good. I have some wax paper that I've torn into sheets that are the right size for the muffins. So there are all my components. I need to move the eggs over a little bit, but we've got a pile of English muffins, we've got a pile of eggs, and we've got a pile of sausage. So Just need to make sure I get a top and a bottom. I'm gonna put down a bottom, a slice of cheese, a sausage patty, an egg patty, and a top. Into that on the sheet, and I'm gonna wrap it up just like a fast food breakfast sandwich. And I'll repeat that for the other 12. This is the final breakfast sandwich. So I have 12 of them wrapped and prepped. These only need to be reheated for about 50 to 60 seconds. It's like I can fit 6. I'm not gonna seal those quite yet because they are still a tad warm. I still need to make her bonus mashed potatoes. I still need to make the fruit salad, but the last thing I actually need to cook is the banana pudding. There are easy ways to make banana pudding, and then there's the from scratch way to make banana pudding. I'm gonna be doing the from scratch way, but just know that typically, you know, a quick and easy banana pudding is just instant vanilla pudding, vanilla wafers, sliced bananas, and some kind of a whipped cream or a Cool Whip. I'm gonna be making a Southern style banana pudding. This recipe is from Brown Eyed Baker, and it makes a pudding from scratch, but it is also topped with a meringue topping that's then baked in the oven. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm gonna do, according to this recipe, is I'm gonna separate 8 eggs. There are much more efficient ways of doing this that people have discovered, but this is the way I always do it. Most important part with this is that we're going to be making a meringue, so you want to be sure not to get any yolk in with the whites. Setting aside the whites, we're just going to be working with the yolks right now. To this, we're going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar and a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, along with about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Mix that all to combine. I was also supposed to add a 1/2 cup of milk to that, so let's get that real quick. Which explains why that mixture was so thick. So now into a saucepan, I'm gonna add 3 cups of milk. And the recipe does specify whole milk. So it says for this 3 cups of milk to heat it over medium heat to a simmer, stirring frequently. I can most certainly say that I've never made pudding from scratch. I'm very much an instant pudding kind of person. But then we're supposed to whisk in 1 cup of the milk into our egg, sugar, flour mixture. Trying to make sure this is nice and smooth. And now we're going to pour this mixture into the saucepan with the rest of the milk. And that's also going to get cooked over medium heat until it has thickened. It says at this stage that you should be stirring it constantly to make sure that it doesn't scald at the bottom. I'd say that this is definitely a labor of love and patience. And again, you can just use boxed instant vanilla pudding. You could even, well, I shouldn't say that because I was going to say you could use instant vanilla pudding and then make the meringue. But then you'd have to find a use for the egg yolks, basically, unless you use meringue powder or a meringue substitute. It's always interesting for me to try to learn how to make something from scratch for the first time and then decide if it's worth making it from scratch or if I'd just rather keep buying the instant version. I feel like with pudding, it's one of those things where I don't mind the instant version. I actually think the instant version is really good. We definitely have a pudding consistency. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna turn off the heat. And now we're supposed to add in 1 tablespoon of butter. And also, it says a teaspoon and a half of vanilla extract. So far so good on the vanilla pudding. I'm actually gonna be making a small one to give to them, and I do wanna make one for Michael and I to keep because this is my first time trying it, so I would like to enjoy some of it as well. arrange some vanilla wafers on the bottom. And now we need to add our bananas. They're a little on the green side, but it does suggest to not use overripe bananas because it says that they will soften up too much during baking. So 3 bananas for each of these basically. They don't need to look that pretty because they're going to be underneath everything. And now we're going to add our pudding layer, which is going to be a little bit of a process because you're supposed to run it through a sieve when you go to add it. Mine's not really pourable, but you're just supposed to make sure that there's no chunks. I want to do a test batch on the one that we're keeping. So as you can see, I added some extra vanilla wafers on half of it because for me, the vanilla wafers are kind of the best part. And if it's only 1 layer at the bottom, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. So a little bit of an experiment, but now we have our egg whites. So these are the 8 egg whites. And to this, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And I also need to set aside 1 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. So I've pre-measured the sugar, and now we're gonna whip these egg whites until they start to form soft peaks. All right, we're still at the soft peak stage, so I'm gonna keep that going a little while longer. We don't have structure quite yet. Not quite at soft peaks or stiff peaks, but I am good enough for me. Kind of at like a marshmallowy stage. Let's spoon our meringue on top of our pudding. Again, splitting this between the 2. Definitely more meringue than pudding in this. I'm gonna spread it out on top. And last step is to bake these. It says at 350 for 15 to 20 minutes or until the meringue is lightly browned on top. All right, those puffed up a lot. I think that's gonna deflate as it cools a little bit, hopefully. It is, oh, it's nice and lightly brown, it's cute. Also try not to burn myself. Okay, there we go. So even though I didn't have any hiccups this go around, like power outages or anything like that, I do feel like because of the menu that I picked and also just, you know, I wasn't feeling like 100% at the beginning of today. I got a really late start in general. I don't think I started until like 2 or 2:30. It is almost 9 o'clock, and so I'm gonna call it for the night. And I might have to reevaluate next week a way that I can try to squeeze this all into one day, preferably like a 5 to 6 hour session. So I'm gonna try to streamline next week's menu, but you know, this is all a learning process. So I'm gonna leave off for today, and then I'll check back in with you tomorrow as we finish up the meals. And really all that's left to do is the extra mashed potatoes and the fruit salad. Not quite the next day, it's actually about 4 days later. I did cook all of those meals on Saturday, this past Saturday, and so I did deliver them on Mother's Day. So I didn't actually film any of the final preparation, but again, it was just a couple of things that I mentioned, and I was hoping to be able to wish her a happy Mother's Day, but unfortunately she was asleep whenever I went to go deliver the meals. With that being said, the fact that it's a few days later is actually beneficial because I can tell you about the progression of some of the meals beyond just sharing the recipes. And what I've heard is she loved everything this week. The fish reheated wonderfully, which made me happy. She's already eaten through some of the muffins. She's loving the chicken salad. She's loving the breakfast sandwiches. Really, I think I did a really good job on this week's menu. With that being said, the last thing I made was the banana pudding and had a little bit of a hiccup with that. I don't know if it's something you guys have ever experienced, but after I finished baking it and it had sat on the counter for a minute, it started to develop kind of just water around the outer edges. It seemed to be coming from the bananas, and I'll insert a clip to show you what I'm talking about with the pudding that we kept. So that was a new recipe that I had never tried before, and I did go back to the blog where I found the recipe, and I went to the reviews, and a lot of the reviews were great, but there were a few reviews that had the same experience that I had, that it kind of turned watery. Like there was still pudding, there was still meringue, but then there was just this extra layer of water that I couldn't figure out where it came from, other than potentially the bananas. But bananas aren't that much of a water-laden fruit, so still not 100% sure. I did still deliver the banana pudding, but I delivered it with like a, if she doesn't like this, it's okay. I tried a new recipe. I'm not quite sure how it turned out because, again, of the water issue, but she did love the banana pudding, and they haven't said anything about the wateriness of it, but that was just what I experienced. So if you've ever experienced something like that, you'll have to let me know if there's a way I could go about fixing it. I have a few theories in my mind, specifically with regards to the pudding. I think that pudding was supposed to be pourable rather than the way that I had to push it through the sieve. So I think I cooked it a little too thick on the stovetop. Maybe, I'm not sure. But anyways, maybe I'll try it again later on down the road, because while I still think that instant pudding is delicious, I did really enjoy that banana pudding. Despite the water issue, it was one of the best banana puddings I've ever had. Like I said, it's been a few days, so I am actually planning the next week's meals already. I have the menu already prepared, and I've already done all of the shopping. Kind of spoiler alert there. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this menu. I'm glad she's enjoying the meals. At some point, I will have to circle back to some of the previous meals that I've made them, which might start next week, for some continuity for them so that they're not always getting new things. They have other things that they have other things that I already know that they've tried and enjoyed, things like the meatloaf. If you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon.